Hello everyone. Today's my discussion is on neuroglia. Now what is the neuroglia? So these are the connective tissue cells of nervous system and they provide support to the functional neurons. And the neuroglia that are 10 to 50 times more in number than the functional neurons. And these glial cells are important in that they support the functional neurons physically, metabolically, and functionally. So, what is the definition of neuroglia? So, neuroglia or glia. Glia means glue. So, neuroglia is the supporting cells of nervous system and neuroglial cells are non-excitable and do not transmit nerve impulse or action potential. So, these cells are also called non-neural cells or glial cells. When compared to the number of the neurons, the number of the glial cells is 10 to 15 times greater and it plays a very important role in the reaction of the nerve during infection. And most commonly, the neuroglial cell constitute the site of the tumor in the nervous system. Then classification of neuroglial cells. So neuroglial cells are distributed in the central nervous system as well as peripheral nervous system. So there are two types of the neuroglial cells. Central neuroglial cells and peripheral neuroglial cells. So these all are the figures of neuroglial cells which are present in the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So this is the figure of astrocytes. This one is microglia and this one is oligodendrocyte and this is ependymal cells. And in peripheral nervous system, the neuroglia is Schwann cell and satellite cell. So central neuroglial cells, there are three types: astrocytes, microglia and oligodendrocytes. So first of all, we discuss about the astrocytes. So astrocytes are star-shaped neuroglial cells present in all the parts of the brain. Two types of the astrocytes are found in the human brain: fibrous astrocytes and protoplasmic astrocytes. Fibrous astrocytes occupy mainly the white matter, and few fibrous astrocytes are also seen in the gray matter. The processes of these cells cover the nerve cells and synapses. And this type of the astrocytes plays a very important role in the formation of the blood-brain barrier by sending processes to the blood vessels of the brain, particularly the capillaries, forming the tight junction with the capillary membrane. So tight junction in turn forms a blood-brain barrier. Then protoplasmic astrocytes that are present mainly in the gray matter, and the processes of neuroglia run between the nerve cell bodies. So these are the another figure of the neuroglial cells in the central nervous system. Then the functions of the astrocytes. So first of all, they form the skeleton of the central nervous system. Now in the developing nervous tissue, astrocytes provide the framework along which young neuronal cells migrate to their final position. And they form an insulation around the synapses so as to prevent chaotic spread of the nerve impulses. And these astrocytes around the synapse have an important role in restoring synaptic contact following the disruption of synapses. Then astrocytes proliferate and form the scars after the neuronal damage, and they take up excess potassium and maintain the normal brain extracellular fluid potassium level. So in this way, this stabilizes the resting membrane potential of neurons. Through their processes and footplate on the walls of the blood vessels, astrocytes contribute to the formation of the blood-brain barrier. And then the astrocytes also store the glycogen. When stimulated by the neurotransmitters like the norepinephrine, they convert glycogen into glucose and release it for the consumption of the neuron. Then microglia. So microglia are the smallest neuroglial cells are mesodermal in origin, and these cells are derived from the monocytes and enter the tissues of nervous system from the blood. And these cells are migrate to the site of infection or injury and are also known as macrophages of central nervous system, and they are also known as scavenger cells. Then what are the functions of microglia? So microglia, they engulf and destroy the microorganism and cellular debris by means of phagocytosis, and they migrate to the injured or infected area and acts as a miniature macrophages. Then oligodendrocytes. These are the neuroglial cells which produce myelin sheath around the nerve fiber in the central nervous system, and they have only few processes and which are very short. Then what are the functions of oligodendrocytes? So they provide a myelination around the nerve fibers in the central nervous system where the Schwann cells are absent. And they also provide support to the central nervous system neurons by forming a semi-stiff connective tissue between the neurons. Then about the peripheral neuroglial cells. So there are also two types, Schwann cells and satellite cells. So Schwann cells are the major glial cells in the peripheral nervous system. Then what are the functions of Schwann cells? So first of all, they provide a myelination or insulation around the nerve fibers present in the peripheral nervous system. And they also plays a very important role in the nerve regeneration and remove the cellular debris during the regeneration by their phagocytic activity. Then satellite cells are the glial cells present on the exterior surface of the peripheral nervous system neurons. Then function of the satellite cells, they provide physical support to the peripheral nervous system neurons, and they also help in regulation of chemical environment of extracellular fluid around the peripheral nervous system neurons. So this video are on about
Neuroglial cells. This topic deals with different types of neuroglial cells and their functions. When a human body is made transparent, we can see a network of nervous system inside it. The brain is the most vital part of the nervous system. Inside the brain, we find neurons along with various other types of other cells like oligodendron, which are irregular in shape and are attached to axons by their protoplasmic process. Their function is to secrete myelin. When toxic substances damage the myelin sheath on the neuron, it is the oligodendron which secretes new myelin to heal the damaged neuron. There are some astrocytes which are found close to the capillaries. These astrocytes have a cell body and numerous branching protoplasmic processes which help in giving support to the neurons. It absorbs food materials from the artery and then passes it to the neuron, so it is acting as a barrier between the blood and the neuron. There are some microglial cells which are scattered and seen floating around. They play an important role in the immunological defense of the nervous system. Microglial cells have the ability to engulf harmful substances. In a quick recap, we will understand that there are three types of neuroglial cells. One type is the oligodendron, which secretes myelin and helps to heal damaged neuron. Another type is the astrocyte, which helps to support the neurons and creates a blood-brain barrier. The third type of neuroglial cell is the microglial cell, which functions as immune cell and engulfs harmful substances.
So in short, functions of neuroglia, in which oligodendrocytes that form myelin in the brain and spinal cord, then ependymal cells that line the cavities of the brain and spinal cord and secrete and circulate the cerebrospinal fluid. Then microglia, they phagocytize and destroy the microorganisms, foreign matter and dead nervous tissue. Then astrocytes, they cover the brain surface and non-synaptic regions of the neurons and form the supportive framework in the central nervous system. And they induce the formation of the blood-brain barrier. They nourish the neuron and produce a growth factors that stimulate the neurons and communicate electrically with the neurons and may influence synaptic signaling and remove the potassium and some neurotransmitters from the extracellular fluid of the brain and spinal cord. And they also help to regulate the composition of extracellular fluid. And they form the scar tissue to replace the damaged nervous tissue. Then neuroglia of the peripheral nervous system, in which first of all Schwann cells, they form the neurolemma around the all peripheral nervous system nerve fibers and myelin around most of them, and they aid in regeneration of the damaged nerve fibers. And satellite cells, they surround soma of the neurons in the ganglia, and they provide electrical insulation and regulate the chemical environment of the neurons. Then about the applied aspect. So glial cell precursors are present in the adult brain, which when multiply irrationally lead to the development of the brain tumor, astrocytoma and ependymoma and oligodendroglioma. And the glia multiply following injury to the brain and form the scar tissue, which prevents the growth of the central axon. Thank you.